Hello, and welcome to the next episode of Two Girls Talk Transits. Today we're reviewing the astrology from March 1st through the March 7th, and we're your host. I'm Maddie.
And I'm Kaleigh.
So, welcome back. We have a big week this week as we're going to wrap up the second part of the eclipse week. But first, on Monday, March 2nd, is Mars entering into Pisces to join the other planets that we have there, namely Mercury retrograde and the Sun and Venus. So, kind of a whole stellium going on again in Pisces along with the North Node.
Uh-huh.
Um, on one hand, this takes Mars out of that Mars-Uranus square that was last week, which was, we haven't experienced that yet recording this, but I imagine it's going to be very disrupting and, bring up a lot of shocking shakeups or conflicts or things to cut away from. Mars in Pisces is a lot of different energy. It's going to go slower in Pisces, being a water sign. It's going to react more based on intuitive feelings and responses to emotions instead of like logic and facts and reasoning. So, a lot more emotional reactions, a lot more. I've noticed, I think when I was talking about like 2 weeks ago or something with just like Pisces energy coming in, like I feel like we've seen a lot more like heartwarming things too. Like if you've been following the monkey punch.
No.
No, you haven't followed that. I forgot to ask you that before the podcast.
Uh,
It's like some monkey in Japan that lives in a zoo. He's like a baby and like he didn't have anybody and like he was getting bullied and now he's like it's just been this social media journey. And like just but it's very Pisces, right? It's very much about like sweetness and cuteness and like cute things kind of in the midst
hmm
of all the Aquarian drama with our government.
Right.
Um so maybe a little bit more of that, but I think that will ease when Venus sleeps Pisces. But I don't know, Mars will definitely just be a lot more of that kind of slower energy, but I do think it's going to stir up against some conflict in Pisces too, with it being on the North Node and just having to deal with like, a little bit more of like, this is just not comfortable in my emotional sphere. So how do I take action on it or how do I like change it, essentially?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you mentioned, like Mars and Pisces can very much bring up like those heavier feelings of like emotional unrest and like ask you to cope with that in some way where like maybe like emotions can more easily pass by. Like a Mars and Pisces, like emotions are like a really big deal and something like you feel like you have to do something because you feel so strongly about this certain thing. Um, yeah, so definitely, like actions based off of those intense emotions that you are experiencing. And I do think like it eventually meeting the North Node is pretty significant because I think that there will be some sort of like destined action or destined direction that you go because your emotions are so loud during this time.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is eclipse season. And also on this day, I did include this like when I was preparing for the monthly
Hmm.
people, but the moon enters Virgo like right away too, as Mars does, and like comes opposite Mars. So it's like also really touching on the eclipse story, even though we're not having an eclipse in Pisces this spring, we still have the North Node there. And so there is some eclipse story happening in Pisces and Virgo with the moon like getting ready to have that eclipse coming opposite Mars is like shit is changing. Like you're gonna have to change or you're gonna have to take action or you're gonna have to rise up to this challenge now. And like I think it has a lot to do with that access in your chart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So,
Um, yeah, and I think it's like gonna have a lot to do with like your longer term goals and visions and how you're wanting to like expand, with all this being ruled by the Jupiter and Cancer. So, um, yeah, I think that is significant. Do you want to say
yeah.
anything else about that before we move to the eclipse?
No, let's just talk about that eclipse because I think that will be the main thing that's happening.
So here is our lunar eclipse on March 3rd. It's going to be in the sign of Virgo, happening at 12 degrees of Virgo. Um, is this our second or third one? I know we have another lunar or another eclipse in Virgo, but it's not till like 2027. We have like one more final one. Let
This
me
is our
see.
third one. Yeah. Or
Yeah, this is our third one. I don't know if you can see
this is our
this
third one.
little one. We have a lunar eclipse February 20th of 2027 in Virgo at 2
Yeah.
degrees. Yeah. So we do have one more final one after this, but it's not for quite a while. Um, so anyways, with this one already being our third one, there is very much a story that's playing out in the Virgo house. Um, there's been a lot of change and a lot of, I think, restructuring happening with like the South Node being here. Pisces has been what the North Node has represented in Pisces, I think is something that we're meant to embrace or meant to expand and meant to move towards in some way. And the Virgo eclipse has been like maybe like taking energy away from the Virgo house or yeah, I think it's more like restructuring it for like a better position. Like there's something that you were doing differently before in the Virgo house, and we need to like restructure this in a major way so we can like change the way we do it for some sort of benefit in the future. Um, yeah, so definitely a lot of change coming up. We do have like a looser sextile to Jupiter in Cancer. Um, which may make like whatever change or whatever you're feeling during this eclipse, whatever you're doing during this eclipse, feel like it's happening for the purpose of expansion. But yeah, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting eclipse as to it's ruled by the retrograde Mercury, right? And there's a big piece of like Mercury retrograde being really loud in relation to this eclipse. So it's like something in the Virgo house that gets popped up from the past or like brought up from your history or from just like the trends of things, like you're having to redo something or like clear away from something. And yeah, with all these planets in Pisces and the eclipse happening in a full moon sign, like in Virgo, with the
Mm-hmm.
South Node pretty close, with Jupiter sextiling it, it's very giving a you have to let go of a lot of control. Like
Mm-hmm.
Mercury does like to have at least not necessarily control, but Mercury likes to always have a really solid understanding of what's happening. Like A plus B equals Y, and that's the truth, and that's the math, and that's how it adds up. But the Saturn Neptune conjunction and then everything happening in Pisces is not giving that practical energy to be very clear and precise of like what is your Virgo house, like how that's usually structured. You're having instead to just kind of be blind to it and like also, trust it more, have more faith because things are just kind of retrograding and they're kind of maybe falling back for review or revision and like having to just lean onto the more like, I don't know exactly what the plan is here, the direction is here, but I have to like let go of that. And I think that's what the eclipse is really asking, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if we think of like maybe signs having like some type of visual like associated with it, like Pisces is very much like fog based. Like it's not very clear where you're going. It can be dreamy and it can be beautiful, but maybe just not entirely like clear. So it is like moving in a way that, is yeah, like faith-based, like you said. I was actually thinking how like about Virgo and Pisces this axis because do you know who Agatha Christie is?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's like the mystery author.
Yeah.
She writes
Yeah.
his like mystery novels. Anyways, um she was like popular. I think she's very much popular with like the older generation. So I think that she was popular like in the 1950s, I want to say. Um But anyways, a Netflix show just got released based off one of her novels, and it's just
Okay.
like this short like 3 episode Netflix show, and I've been watching it. And she's a Virgo, and I was like when I was watching it, I was like, dang, I could never think of like all these like small details that she adds to it and like all these layers. Like, I don't think I could ever get that detailed and that niche down and that specific about like these small things that like are interwoven together. And I'm like, that's so Virgo though, to like have control over like just the smallest of details and be able to like weave them together to like make sense into like a bigger picture thing. Um, but that's like how it's so much different from Pisces. Pisces is like misses these smaller details and just like wants to tell this like broader story, but wouldn't be able to like infuse it with like twists and turns, I think, in the same way like a Virgo could. Um, so yeah, I just think it's interesting. Like it very much, this eclipse very much will be like the absence of details, I think, and smaller things that like Virgo does really well at.
Yeah, yeah, I do love that because Virgo or like even Mercury in general is just like the planet of like discernment and like assigning rules to things like this belongs here because this is that and this belongs here. And like I think of Virgo of like the herbalist who has all the herbs carefully in the jars, like labeled and like knows exactly what each of
Like
them are.
meticulous, yeah.
Yeah. And but there's just like in Pisces, there's just like none of that. It's just kind of more of like, well, it's more just like the spiritual things or the things you can't see, but you just feel it and you know that to be true, versus Virgo is like the things you can see clearly defined to be true. And I
Yeah.
think as we're just seeing in our society, things are not clearly defined. The rules aren't clearly defined, like so having to lie is just kind of like having to let that go. Like we don't have that discernment right now. We just don't have that
Yeah.
space.
I think
Yeah.
Virgo would be like empirically, relevant like evidence, like researched and
Yeah.
it's like proven to be right. And like Pisces is very much like, well, what do you feel like you should do or what do you feel like is right? Like
Yeah.
yeah, what does that feel like it makes sense to you or does it feel like it
What
doesn't? Like
resonates?
yeah. Yeah, it's very much like asking you to like lean into that like intuitive space without any evidence. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, which can be like super uncomfortable. It's like imagine that this like new drug comes out on the market, but there's absolutely no evidence about it. There's just like claims that people feel good when they're taking it. It's like
Yeah.
so like
Right.
that. Yeah.
That's like Pisces though. Like all the like spiritual people. Like, well, it works for
Hmm.
me. It could totally work
Yeah.
for you. You don't have to understand how you're gonna make it happen, but it will work.
Right. Literally. You're like, okay,
It's,
sure.
uh, yeah, but yeah, I mean, I don't know. Anything else do you want to say? I feel like it's
No.
gonna just yeah, it's quieter. It is much quieter than the last eclipse because there's no Uranus aspect. So I don't think it's gonna. If we're comparing those two, this one's gonna be much quieter and softer. But I still think it's like a mental. There's like a this is ruled by Mercury, so there's a lot of mental energy around this eclipse of having to just kind of release a belief or like a truth.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure. And I think too, like you're going to revert back to some kind of previous thought or idea that you've had, like being
Yeah.
ruled by this Mercury in Pisces. There's very much like something that you go back to in the past that you've done before. Maybe you rework it in some way and like continue to go forward with it, or maybe you decide to discard it. I don't know, but there is very much of like, okay, I'm gonna go and like try to do this thing again or figure out what I was doing before. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it will just be some sort of revision because it's related to the Mercury retrograde. So,
Yeah, for sure. Cool.
all right. So the next day on the 4th, which is going to be then that Wednesday right after the eclipse, of course, eclipse will linger, it will have a feeling. Oh, interesting is that the moon's doing it too. So Venus is going to sextile Uranus, and then the moon's also going to be opposite Venus, trining Uranus. Yeah, so maybe there is still a little bit of change with the eclipse.
Right.
Right? I was thinking, oh, it won't be that bad, but then Uranus does get activated the day after. But this seems like a positive, as these are
Yeah.
positive, they're more flowing. So maybe it's like kind of related to it could play out like this, right? The solar eclipse in Aquarius brought a significant disruption to your life. And then you are trying to kind of in between the eclipses navigate what that disruption looks like, feels like, what it changes. And then part of the Virgo eclipse is releasing, maybe like, oh, I thought all of this to be true, but it's not playing out in that way. But sort
Mm-hmm.
of like letting go of that control allows for a more positive flow of change, or just embracing the Uranus energy of like uncertainty and chaos a little bit. Venus makes that like, you know what, it'll be fine kind of thing. Um,
Yeah,
I
I
don't
like
know.
that. I like that
Yeah,
like a couple days prior, we did have that square to Uranus, but then it like turns into this like Venus sextile to it. Um, I like that piece of it too. It's like eventually, the change feels like meaningful and supportive.
right.
Um,
Like there was the purpose behind it, and like you
yeah.
can actually work with it, or it's bringing you a better connection somehow.
Yeah. And I think it would be nice because a lot of these like interactions we've had with Uranus have been pretty disruptive and like hard to cope with, I think. So having some sort of like positive aspects I think will be nice.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I agree. So just a nice little shift. I like it. It's a good day. Yeah, we can go on if you
cool.
want.
So on the 5th, we have the sun moving into a trine with Jupiter. So the sun will be in Pisces, moving into a trine with that Jupiter in Cancer retrograde. I think this will just be like a positive day, like filled with um like optimism. I think you might feel like after that change had happened or something was disrupted, I think you will be able to like see maybe what you want to move towards or how you want to expand in some way. Yeah, I think it'll be nice. I think this is also a pretty sweet day and Thursdays are ruled by Jupiter anyways, so I think we have some of that like what's that called? Like when things are in sync with each other, like this feeling of things being pretty in sync. Yeah, I think it'd be nice and soft and sweet.
Yeah,
We do.
it does seem like all the energy right after this eclipse is more positive. Like the Venus
Yeah.
sextiling Uranus is a little bit of a disruption, but it's like embracing it. And then yeah, I mean, the sun trining Jupiter is one of the best aspects between these two. They work really well together. They're on the same team. The trine is an aspect ruled by Jupiter. So, and then the sun is in Jupiter's sign. So, this is actually like one of the very positive aspects, sort of like that Venus trine Jupiter when we had that last week or 2 weeks last week. Um, but this one's really is it optimistic. It's like really good ego boost actually, which is interesting to think about. But it is like a solidification of like an identity within you or like an understanding of like this is what I'm going to attach to or like identify with because this is important now for me to continue in some way.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it'll be
Yeah.
nice. And this is like our final day that we have Venus in Pisces, so I think,
Mm.
you know, they, we deserve to feel feel nice for this like little bit of time until Venus pops over into Aries. So, yeah, I think it'll be good. I have like a grand trine on this day, so be nice. I'll
Nice.
trine my natal Jupiter. So,
Oh, nice. You should have
yeah.
some good energy with
Yeah, well,
that.
it'll be off by like a degree, but
That's
nonetheless.
close enough.
Yeah, I'm gonna take it. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
I was just gonna say it's just like a day where like you do feel more like confident, like that feeling of confidence energy, or that feeling of like you can take on what is happening, or that you feel it's like a belief. You're holding some sort of personal belief that it's like really making yourself feel like, yes, this is true for me, and this is working out, and this is how exactly I need this to be, you know?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think it's a good day for like dreaming too, like dreaming about the
Mm,
possibilities,
yeah.
of like where you could go with like the change and, what you could eventually do with it. Because Pisces is such like a dreamy sign.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be a good day to just like
Yeah.
allow yourself to like be in like some kind of like new embodiment or new um
Right.
like thought process, yeah, about what you're gonna do.
Yeah, like it's kind of that in rebirth energy a
Right.
bit. All right, the 6th, then the next day is Venus, yes. Enters into Aries on Venus Day on Friday. I don't like Venus and Aries. I'm just upset about it.
I don't
I
like
just
it
have a
either.
personal vendetta
Mhm.
against it. But Venus moving into Aries, this is the sign of her detriment. She's not as respected into Aries. She's asked to take more risks. She's asked to be more fiery, more aggressive, and more like putting herself out there. And granted, we don't have a lot of fire energy lately. We've had so much water, so maybe it will feel nice to step into something that has more of an energetic momentum and push or like passion to do something again or to just like, I don't know, really put yourself out there, take a little bit of that risk. But what I just don't like, obviously, is that this Saturn Neptune conjunction is getting activated and like
Right.
that just has not been fun. We just realized before when we were talking before the podcast, like the whole thing going on in Mexico with the cartels is all Saturn Neptune. Like the raid to kill the cartel leader was right on the Saturn Neptune conjunction day. And then
Hmm.
we were looking up articles right before that were talking about like all the social media presence that this is getting. A lot of it's been fabricated. Like the cartels are trying to push this narrative that they're like destroying Mexico and they're ruining all these people and killing all these people to show that the Mexican government is not in control, which is actually not the truth. But like it's very loud on social media if you haven't been noticing it. So it's just what's real. Like, you
Hmm.
know. And like, Mars again activated as like the killing of a drug lord, Neptune, Saturn, like
Yeah. Yeah, very much. I thought that was, yeah, so interesting about like Neptune pulling into the whole picture because, Neptune is like the ruler of drugs. I think we did mention something like last podcast or the podcast before with like, I was like, maybe there will be restrictions on drugs in some
yeah,
way. And it's just like the killing of the cartel leader.
cartel
Yeah.
leaders.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very interesting. I would have
Like,
like expected that to be more of like a Mars Neptune, but since Mars did come
but
into the
it's in a
picture,
Mars rule
yeah,
sign. Yeah.
yeah. So super
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Right.
Um,
Yeah, I was just gonna say, like, we're seeing now, like, how it means for Saturn and Neptune to act in a sign that they haven't been in that we've experienced. It's loud, it's aggressive, you
right.
know?
Yeah, because Neptune and Pisces, the drug lords were just like frolicking through the fields, like just doing their business. Like nobody's really bothering them. There's no restrictions put on drugs. And then like it moves into Aries and all of a sudden, somebody's out for you. Like, there's like
Yeah.
restrictions being imposed on you and no longer are you running around free and frolicking. So it is super interesting to see that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, just Venus here, you're gonna get more caught up into that Saturn Neptune energy, and like I just think like more risk or more of that, probably violence too, a
Yeah,
bit.
I think it's definitely like imposing that like Saturn Neptune energy onto Venus. Like
Right.
I see like Saturn and Neptune kind of being like the stronger force rather than like Venus being a stronger force here. So it's kind of like whatever Venus rules in your chart is getting like a dose of this like confusion and restriction in some way. So if it's like Taurus rules your second house of finances, like all of a sudden finances become confusing and like hard to deal with. Um, and if like Libra rules like I don't know, your relationships, like all of a sudden like I don't really know what's going on with my relationship or like where we're going or what we're doing. Like, should I be more aggressive, with like Venus and like a Mars ruled sign? You might be,
Right.
yeah, like very much questioning like do I need to up the ante in like how I relate to people to like make this less confusing? You're really going to be like questioning like yeah, how you're relating to people or how you're having conversations, kind of things like this.
Yeah, I agree because I think, I mean, technically the aspect goes exact tomorrow on Saturday, but I think we can just continue talking about it now. It's just Venus, it does immediately conjunct Neptune like the next
Yeah.
day, but even like still today on Friday, you're gonna feel it, right? And to that piece too, I'm thinking a lot about like Neptune does really represent people who lie a lot. And like, I don't know if you noticed that. I've noticed it a lot. And like, I've been around, a lot of Neptunian people come to me, and I have a heavy Neptunian part in my chart too. So like, I've noticed that, but just like it's neither need the lies don't even have to be intentional, but they can just also just have this different vision of themselves that they just promote this like false identity towards
You're
you.
right.
So like Venus being the ruler of relationships too, meeting Neptune can bring like, people not telling the truth or like people pushing a different agenda or just like being around people who are not really being authentic or honest with themselves about something.
Mhm.
The delusion is heavy here, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I could definitely see that. Yeah, I would be more careful in like any kind of like relationship stuff you have going on during this day. Like even if it's just like meeting a realtor or like just something like silly, like not something crazy. I would just be very aware that like Neptune is influencing us.
Yeah.
So just like take things definitely with a grain of salt, especially Mercury retrograde too, like comes into the
Hmm.
picture. Like just I would not take things at face value.
Yeah, there's just too much unknowns right now and like deception. But if you're trying to deceive someone,
It's
you
a
can
good day
definitely get
for it.
away. Yeah, you can get away with that.
Yeah. Heck yeah.
So,
Cool.
yeah,
So on that same day though, the 7th. So we've moved
yeah.
forward to the 7th already, which will be Saturday.
Mhm.
And the last one we have is the Mercury retrograde will conjunct the sun. Um, yeah, I think it's kind of like continuation of the conversation that we're already having, like reviewing, parts of our identity or parts of who we are. I think maybe like this confusion in relating will have us maybe questioning like ourselves or our identity or if we need to change in some way. Um, so I think it kind of highlights that. Like, am I doing things wrong? Do I need to do things differently? Very much this uncertainty maybe around who we are, how we communicate. And I think we're just all gonna kind of be feeling like, do I need to change? Because, Mercury like very much like represents this like changeable creature or like changeable thing. Like it can kind of fluctuate and go one direction or the next. So, when it comes into aspect, especially retrograde, you're just kind of trying to assess like which direction do I need to go. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. And that Mercury, is that planet of like trancing. It is trans planet too,
Yeah, yeah.
like it Joy's in the first house, which is like right on the horizon, which is between the night and day. It is the messenger to the underworld. It's the only planet that can go freely from, or like the only god that can go freely from the underworld to the world above, as like it
Mm-hmm.
can roam between the two. So it is a very much like kind of, it always does in astrology too. We talk about Mercury, it takes on very much the energy of the planets that it's around. So if it's around like Venus and Jupiter, it's going to be more positive. If it's around like Mars or Saturn, it's going to be like a thief and like more negative. So
Mm-hmm.
like, um, kind of to think that in, but the Mercury Cazimi day, which is today, that conjunction, yeah, it's a lot of information about like what is this Mercury retrograde brought up for you in terms of like probably related to the eclipse. What have you been asked to let go of control over, and how does that affect your like ego or your identity of like having to accept the fact that you don't actually know this, or you don't actually know what's going on, or you don't actually have the clear understanding that you thought you did, and that sort of inner awareness that comes associated with it, like if you're ready to let this go about yourself, or like, um, and generally, this day brings clarity, but I don't think that that's actually going to happen. I think it is going to be more of this abstract thought of like, this just does really feel like a true belief for me. And that's exactly what I'm going to lean into versus it being like, oh, this factual thing happened and now this is true?
Right, right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. We have a lot longer of this, like, not like super a lot, but we do have quite a bit longer of this, like Mercury and Pisces too. So we do still have like a lot of review here. And I would think that, like you mentioned, even though, a Mercury Cazimi is usually like something where, yay, like I have a lot of clarity when Mercury is retrograde, it does kind of throw things off because we still have like further back to go, into the past or into
Yeah.
reviewing whatever it is. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Like this weekend in general is pretty interesting to me because I feel like it's like this maybe this like change or sparks of ideas and change, but it's also coupled with all of this confusion and all of this uncertainty and all of this like feelings of like we mentioned earlier, like having to trust in the unknown. Um,
Mhm.
so I think whatever does end up happening or whatever we do end up doing, the element of uncertainty is going to be very much like present and like noticeable when we're going through it. I don't think any of us are going to be feeling like I 100% know that this is going to be good or right or true, you know what I mean?
And
So,
if they do, that's the Neptunian piece where they're lying
yeah,
to
it's
you.
like deceptive, yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't think like this is the moment of clarity at all. Like, I don't think that we're gonna go through this Mercury Cazimi and be like, I know exactly what's happening here. I think it's gonna be okay. I really don't know what's happening here, and maybe I just have to embrace that or trust
Right,
that. And the part that does suck is like after this piece with Mercury, Mercury's just getting closer and closer to Mars. And so like it does like the Mercury retrograde only really does get worse. It's like,
right,
crap, like I'm so tired of not knowing anything and now I have to take action on not knowing anything. So like
right.
it
I
it it
know.
does get a little bit more rough in terms of that space, but maybe it's if you can embrace that around this time, I think that will make that transit better.
Yeah, because none of our placements, like until the sun moves into Aries and gets exalted, none of our placements are really in like a super like our p personal planets are in like a super strong position right now. The only
No,
planet we have in a good space is Jupiter in Cancer. So,
which is still retrograde
right,
for a couple of
right.
days. So like, yeah, it's still not even that great right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So, nothing is really like, yay.
Yeah, it's more
Yeah,
like just trying to tread water right now and like get through
right.
everything that you're feeling.
Yeah, really happy my solar return. My birthday's on March 4th, so I'm really happy my solar
Oh
return
yeah.
caught that Venus in Pisces before it
Yeah,
like
you did. You just made
yeah, because that's like
it.
my saving grace. Last year, I was born with a or not born. My solar return was like a Venus retrograde in Aries. It was like the worst. So,
Oh, yeah, everyone had that retrograde and that Mercury
yeah,
retrograde simultaneous with it. Yeah, it was rough.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
That's
anyhow,
good. And you have an exalted Jupiter in your solar return chart too. So,
that's true, but it'll still be retrograde, but nonetheless, still there.
nonetheless, you got Venus there in Pisces. That's great.
Right? Yeah, so we
Yay.
can hope for the
Happy
best.
birthday.
Thank you.
Belated. Okay, well, that's this week. If you want more content from us, TikTok and Instagram and YouTube at Two Girls Talk Transits, and all of our information for readings with us are linked below. And we will see you all next week.
To you.
Bye.